Hello, my good friends. How are you today? May God bless you all. I will not introduce anything. You guys watch the video and feel it. Then let's evaluate together. The rain tapped a steady rhythm against the floor-to-ceiling windows of James Harper's office. A sleek corner suite on the 45th floor of a glass tower in downtown Seattle. It was late November, and the city outside was a blur of gray. Elliott Bay swallowed by mist, the Space Needle barely a shadow in the distance. James sat behind his walnut desk, a half-empty cup of espresso cooling beside his laptop. At 43, he was the picture of success. CEO of Harper Innovations, a tech empire worth $15 billion, with a wardrobe of tailored gray suits and a penthouse in Capitol Hill that Architectural Digest had once called a minimalist masterpiece. But tonight, like most nights, he was alone. The hum of the office, his only company. The clock on his screen blinked 7:32 p.m. He should have been home by now, sprawled on his leather sectional with a glass of bourbon, but home felt more like a museum than a refuge. Instead, he was prepping for a big meeting in San Francisco next week, a pitch to lock in $1 billion contract with a Bay Area startup. His inbox was a war zone of unread emails, and he was sifting through them, deleting spam and flagging priorities when something caught his eye. A notification from the company's old email archive system. Recovered message from 6 years ago. Sender, Emily Carter. James froze, his finger hovering over the trackpad. Emily Carter, his ex-wife. They'd been married for 4 years, a whirlwind of love that crashed and burned 6 years ago when he chose Harper Innovations over her. She'd wanted a life, kids, a house, weekends at the farmer's market. He'd wanted an empire. The divorce was quick. Clinical, a few signatures on a stack of papers while he was on a call closing a deal in Tokyo. He hadn't spoken to her since. Why the hell was an email from her popping up now? He clicked it open, his pulse ticking up a notch. The subject line was blank, and the body was short. James, I need to talk to you. It's important. About us. Call me. Below it, a single attachment, a grainy photo. He opened it, and the world tilted. It was a baby, maybe a few weeks old, swaddled in a blue blanket. The kid had dark hair, a tiny scrunched-up face, and eyes that hit James like a punch to the gut. Bright blue, sharp. His eyes. He leaned closer to the screen, breath catching. He'd seen those eyes in the mirror every damn day for 43 years. His hand shook as he zoomed in, tracing the curve of the kid's jaw, the shape of the nose. It was like looking at a baby picture of himself. "What the?" he muttered, shoving back from the desk. The chair squeaked against the hardwood floor. His mind raced, doing the math. 6 years ago. The divorce was final in March. If Emily had been pregnant then... He shook his head. No way. She would have told him. Right? He grabbed his phone and dialed Rachel and Gwen, his assistant, who picked up on the second ring. "Hey, boss," she said, her voice chipper despite the hour. "You still at the office?" "Rachel, this email," he said, skipping the small talk. "It's from 6 years ago, from Emily. Why am I just seeing it now?" There was a pause, the faint sound of her typing in the background. "Oh yeah, the old system," she said. "Back then, it had this crazy filter, blocked anything without a clear subject line or from non-business contacts. We upgraded it after you complained about missing a client email, remember?" I guess this one got stuck in the archive. James rubbed his temple, a headache blooming. So you're telling me there could be a bunch of emails I never saw? Maybe, she said, hesitant. I mean, it's possible. Want me to dig through the archive for you? No, he snapped, then softened. No, it's fine. I'll handle it. Thanks, Rachel. He hung up, staring at the photo again. His chest felt tight, like someone had cranked a vice around his ribs. Emily had tried to reach him, and he'd missed it, buried under the weight of his own ambition. But a kid? His kid? He opened a browser and typed her name into the search bar, hands trembling. Emily Carter, Seattle. Nothing useful popped up. Some LinkedIn profiles, a few random Facebook pages. He added Rainier Valley on a hunch, remembering she'd always loved the scrappy, artsy vibe of South Seattle. That's when he found it. A crowdfunding page from a local charity. Help a single mom and her boys stay warm this winter. There was a photo. Emily, older now, her brown hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, standing in front of a beat-up duplex. She was smiling, but it didn't reach her eyes. Next to her were 4 little boys, maybe 5 years old, bundled in mismatched coats. 4 identical faces, dark hair, blue eyes, his eyes. James dropped the phone onto the desk with a clatter. Holy shit, he whispered. Quadruplets. 4 kids, his kids. The room spun, the rain outside blurring into a dull roar. He stood up, pacing to the window, staring down at the wet streets of Seattle. The lights of Pike Place Market twinkled in the distance, mocking him. He'd built a fortune, a legacy. But what if he'd missed this? What if he'd had a family all this time and didn't even know it? He grabbed his coat, a black wool thing that cost more than most people's rent, and headed for the door. The elevator ride down was a blur, his reflection in the steel doors showing a man he barely recognized, pale, wide-eyed, unraveling. The lobby was empty, except for the security guard, who nodded as James strode past. Night, Mr. Harper. Yeah, James mumbled, stepping into the drizzle. His Range Rover was parked in the garage across the street, and he climbed in, the leather seats cold against his back. He didn't start the engine right away. Instead, he pulled up the crowdfunding page again, zooming in on the boys. Caleb, Isaac, Finn, Levi. The names were listed in the description. They were raising money for heat and winter clothes. Emily was working odd jobs, the page said, but it wasn't enough. Rainier Valley, he said aloud, plugging it into the GPS. It was a 20-minute drive, maybe less without traffic. He could be there tonight, see her, see them. But what the hell would he say? Hey, Em, funny story. I just found out I might be a dad, ×4. He laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that echoed in the car. His phone buzzed. Nathan, his twin brother and co-CEO, texting about the San Francisco pitch. You good for the slides tomorrow? Investors are antsy. James ignored it. For once, Harper Innovations could wait. He turned the key, the engine purring to life, and pulled out onto the slick streets. The drive felt surreal, like he was floating through someone else's life. Downtown gave way to quieter neighborhoods, the high-rises shrinking into squat houses and corner stores. Rainier Valley was rough around the edges, graffiti on the walls, a taco truck glowing under a street lamp, the faint thump of bass from a passing car. He parked near the address from the crowdfunding page, a faded duplex with peeling paint and a sagging porch. The lights were off, no one home. He sat there, hands gripping the wheel, the rain streaking down the windshield. What was he doing? Showing up unannounced after 6 years? He didn't even know if Emily still lived here. Maybe she'd moved. Maybe those boys weren't his. But those eyes, he couldn't shake them. A memory hit him. Emily, years ago, sitting across from him at a diner in Belltown. She'd been sketching house plans on a napkin, talking about a big family, a yard, a dog. He'd laughed it off, too busy dreaming of IPOs and stock options. "We've got time," he'd said. Apparently they hadn't. He pulled out his phone again, staring at the email. "Call me." 6 years too late. He opened the photo of the baby, then the crowdfunding page, flipping between them. The resemblance was uncanny. He wasn't crazy. Those boys were his. He could feel it in his bones. The rain picked up, drumming harder against the roof. James leaned back, closing his eyes. Tomorrow he'd find her. Tomorrow he'd get answers. For now, he just sat there, a billionaire in a beat-up neighborhood, chasing a past he didn't know he'd lost. "Hey, folks," he imagined saying to an invisible audience, a habit from his keynote speeches. "What do you think happens next? Does James track down Emily and the boys, or does he chicken out and head back to his penthouse? Stick around to find out. Hit that subscribe button and drop a comment. Where are you watching from tonight?" The next morning, James Harper woke up to the sound of rain slapping against his penthouse windows in Capitol Hill. He'd barely slept. The image of those 4 blue-eyed boys burned into his brain like a brand. His king-size bed felt too big, the crisp white sheets too cold. He rolled out of it, splashing water on his face in the marble bathroom, staring at the man in the mirror. Dark stubble shadowed his jaw, and his eyes, those damn eyes, looked back at him, haunted. He couldn't shake the feeling that he'd missed something huge, something that could have changed everything. By 9 a.m., he was back in his Range Rover, the GPS set for Rainier Valley. Seattle was gray and soggy, the kind of day that made you want to stay inside with a coffee and a podcast. But James wasn't in the mood for comfort. He needed answers. The drive south was a descent from the polished streets of downtown to a grittier world. Corner stores with neon signs, a mural of Jimi Hendrix splashed across a brick wall, the smell of frying tortillas drifting from a food truck parked under a flickering street lamp. Rainier Valley wasn't his scene, but it was Emily's. Always had been. He'd found a lead on a community Facebook page. Rainier Valley Makers Market, Saturday 10 a.m., 3 p.m., crafts, food, fun. Emily's name was tagged in a comment about wooden ornaments she'd be selling. It was a long shot, but it was all he had. He pulled into a gravel lot near the market, the tires crunching over puddles. The place was alive despite the drizzle. Tents lined up in uneven rows, people haggling over handmade scarves and jars of honey, kids darting between stalls with sticky hands. The air smelled like wet wool and cinnamon from a churro stand nearby. James adjusted his coat collar, feeling out of place in his $2,000 wool number among the flannel shirts and thrift store jackets. He scanned the crowd, heart thudding. Then he saw her. Emily Carter stood under a sagging blue tarp, arranging a table of wooden trinkets, little carved animals, coasters, a few lopsided picture frames. Her brown hair was tied back in a loose ponytail, strands sticking to her neck from the damp. She wore a faded green parka and jeans, her hands rough and red from work. She looked tired, older than he remembered, but still beautiful in that quiet, stubborn way he'd fallen for years ago. And beside her, clustered around a cardboard box like it was a treasure chest, were 4 little boys. James stopped dead, his breath catching. They were identical, dark hair peeking out from under hoodies, small hands clutching a beat-up rubber ball they were tossing between them. But it was their faces that hit him like a freight train. Sharp jaws, straight noses, and those piercing blue eyes. His eyes. He'd seen photos last night, but seeing them in person was different. Raw. Real. Like staring into a mirror that showed him a life he didn't know he'd lived. He took a step forward, then another, his boots squelching in the mud. Emily hadn't noticed him yet, too busy handing a customer a carved bear for $5. The boys were laughing, their voices high and bright, cutting through the market noise. One of them, the tallest, with a serious set to his mouth, looked up and caught James staring. The kid's eyes narrowed, and he nudged the brother next to him, who was fiddling with a stick like it was a spaceship. "Mom," the tall one said, tugging Emily's sleeve. "That guy's looking at us." Emily turned, and the second her gaze landed on James, her face went still. The bear slipped from her hand, clattering onto the table. "James," she said, her voice low, almost lost in the hum of the crowd. It wasn't a question, just a statement, like she'd been expecting this day and dreading it all at once. "Emily," he managed, his throat dry. He stepped closer, the tarp dripping water onto his shoulder. Are they?" He couldn't finish, his eyes darting to the boys. They'd stopped playing now, all 4 staring up at him with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. She crossed her arms, her jaw tightening. "What are you doing here, James?" "I found your email," he said, fumbling for words. "Last night, in the archive, you sent it 6 years ago with a picture, and then I saw the fundraiser page. Those boys." He gestured helplessly at them. "They look like me." Emily's expression hardened, a wall slamming down between them. "You don't get to show up after 6 years and ask questions," she said, her voice sharp enough to cut. "You made your choice back then. Harper Innovations over everything else, right?" "Mom, who's he?" The tall boy, Caleb James guessed from the fundraiser, stepped in front of his brothers, his small chin jutting out. "Don't make her sad." "I'm not here to," James started, then stopped, crouching down to Caleb's level. Up close, the resemblance was staggering. It wasn't just the eyes. It was the way Caleb held himself, protective, like James had been as a kid watching out for Nathan. "Hey, buddy, I'm just an old friend of your mom's. I didn't mean to upset her." Caleb didn't budge, his stare unwavering. "She doesn't talk about you." James swallowed, the words stinging more than they should have. He straightened up, looking back at Emily. "Em, please. I didn't know. If I'd seen that email—" "You didn't," she snapped. "And I stopped trying after the first month. You were too busy building your empire to care about anything else. So don't stand here acting like you've got a right to know anything about them. Them, he echoed, glancing at the boys again. The one with the stick, Finn maybe, was whispering to the smallest one, Levi, who clutched the ball like a shield. Isaac, the one with a smudge of dirt on his cheek, tilted his head, studying James like he was a puzzle. They're mine, aren't they? Emily's silence was answer enough. The air between them crackled, heavy with 6 years of unspoken words. The market buzzed around them, oblivious, someone haggling over a quilt, a kid crying for a churro. But for James, it was just him, Emily, and those 4 little faces. "Mommy, I'm cold," Levi said, his voice small, tugging at her parka. His hoodie was too thin, the sleeves frayed. James's stomach twisted. These were his kids, and they were shivering in the rain while he slept in a penthouse with heated floors. "Come on, boys," Emily said, breaking eye contact with James. She started packing up her table, her movements quick, deliberate. "We're heading out." "Emily, wait," James said, stepping forward. "We need to talk about this. You deserve nothing." She cut him off, her eyes flashing. "You don't get to waltz in here after all this time and play daddy. Go back to your tower, James. We're fine without you." She scooped up Levi, the other 3 trailing behind her as she grabbed the box of crafts. James stood there, rooted to the spot, watching them disappear into the crowd. Caleb threw one last look over his shoulder, a warning in his eyes. Then they were gone, swallowed by the sea of tents and umbrellas. "Damn it," James muttered, running a hand through his wet hair. His chest ached, a hollow, gnawing pain he hadn't felt since the divorce. He'd found them, his sons, and lost them in the same breath. Emily's words echoed in his head. "We're fine without you." But they weren't. He'd seen the thin coats, the tired lines on her face, and those boys. They were his. He knew it deep down, like a truth he couldn't unsee. A woman approached the table, short, with a buzz cut and a nose ring, carrying a stack of wooden bowls. "You buying something?" she asked, then paused, eyeing him. "Wait, you're that guy, aren't you? Harper Innovations?" James blinked. Yeah. I'm Hannah," she said, setting the bowls down. "Emily's friend. I know who you are, and I'm telling you now. Don't mess with her. She's been through enough without you stirring shit up." "I'm not trying to hurt her," James said, his voice rough. "I just want to know the truth." Hannah snorted. "Truth's been there for 6 years. You're a little late to the party." She turned away, leaving him standing in the drizzle, the weight of her words sinking in. He trudged back to the Rover, the rain soaking through his coat. Inside, he sat with the engine off, staring at the muddy lot. He'd found them. That was the first step. But Emily's wall was up, and those boys didn't even know who he was. He had to try again. He would try again. "Hey, everyone," he said to the empty car, a faint smile tugging at his lips. First big moment down. James meets his kids, and it's a total train wreck. What's he gonna do next? Stick with me to find out. Hit subscribe and drop a comment. What would you say to Emily if you were him? James Harper didn't go straight home after the market. The encounter with Emily and the boys had left him rattled, a mess of adrenaline and guilt churning in his gut. He drove aimlessly through Seattle, the wipers swiping at the drizzle, the city lights smearing into streaks of gold and red. Rainier Valley faded into the rear view, but those four faces, Caleb's glare, Isaac's curiosity, Finn's daydreaming, Levi's quiet watchfulness, stayed glued to his mind. By the time he pulled into the underground garage at Harper Innovations, it was past noon, and his phone was buzzing with missed calls from Nathan. The office tower loomed over downtown, all glass and steel, a monument to the empire he and Nathan had built from a garage startup 15 years ago. James took the elevator to the 45th floor, the hum of it doing nothing to calm his nerves. His office was still as he'd left it. Espresso cup cold on the desk, laptop open to Emily's email. He sank into his chair, staring at the screen, the baby photo still up. That little face, those eyes. It was like a ghost from a life he'd never lived. The door swung open without a knock, and Nathan Harper strode in, identical to James in height and build, but sharper around the edges. Where James wore gray suits and let his hair grow a little messy, Nathan was all black Armani and a buzzed cut, his jaw set like he was ready to fight the world. He carried an iPad under one arm, his other hand already pointing. "Where the hell have you been?" Nathan said, dropping into the chair across the desk. "I've been texting you about the San Francisco slides for hours. Investors are breathing down my neck and you're AWOL." James rubbed his eyes, too tired to dodge. "I had something come up." "Something?" Nathan's brows shot up. "What, like a hangover? You look like shit, man." "It's not that." James leaned back, the leather creaking under him. He hesitated, then let it out. "I saw Emily yesterday, at a market in Rainier Valley." Nathan's face darkened instantly, the name hitting like a live wire. "Your ex. What did she want? Money. She hear about the San Francisco deal and figure it's time to cash in?" "No," James said, sharper than he meant. "She didn't want anything. I found her by accident. She's got kids, Nathan, 4 boys, quadruplets, and they look exactly like me." Nathan stared at him, the silence stretching tight. Then he laughed, a short, harsh bark. "You're kidding, right? Emily shows up after 6 years with 4 mini U's and you just buy it? Come on, James." "I'm not buying anything," James shot back. "I saw them. They're 5 years old, identical, and they've got my eyes, my face. You can't fake that." Nathan set the iPad down, leaning forward, elbows on his knees. "Okay, let's say they're yours. Big if. Why's she popping up now? We just locked in that billion-dollar contract. Your net worth's through the roof. Timing's a little convenient, don't you think?" "She's not popping up," James said, frustration rising. "I tracked her down after finding an old email she sent 6 years ago. It got buried in the system. She tried to tell me back then, and I missed it." Nathan's eyes narrowed, skepticism etched into every line of his face. "So she says, you don't think it's weird she kept 4 kids a secret until you're at peak billionaire status? She's playing you, bro." "She's not," James insisted, though a sliver of doubt crept in. Emily's anger at the market had been real, raw and jagged. But what if Nathan was right? What if there was more to it? "She's struggling, Nathan. Living in Rainier Valley, selling crafts to get by. The boys were in coats that didn't even fit." "Struggling," Nathan repeated, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Perfect sob story. Look, I get it. She was your first love. You've got a soft spot. But you need to think with your head, not your heart." Get a DNA test. If they're yours, fine. We'll deal with it. If not, you've got a gold digger on your hands." James clenched his jaw, the word gold digger grating against everything he knew about Emily. She'd never cared about his money. Hell, she'd hated how much he chased it. But 6 years was a long time. People changed. "I don't need a test," he said. "One look at them, and I know." "You don't know shit," Nathan snapped, standing up. He paced to the window, hands on his hips, staring out at the gray sprawl of Seattle. "You're too close to this. Let me handle it. I'll get someone to dig into her, quietly, see what she's been up to." "No," James said, standing too. "I don't want you poking around in her life." "Too late," Nathan said, turning with a tight smile. "I already called my guy this morning after your third ignored text. He's good, discreet. You'll thank me when we've got the full picture." James's stomach dropped. "You had no right." "I'm your brother," Nathan cut in, "and your business partner. If she's got some angle, it's not just your problem. It's ours. Harper Innovations isn't taking a hit because you're chasing a fairy tale." Before James could argue, Nathan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his smile widening. "Speak of the devil. First report's in." He swiped the screen and read aloud. "Emily Carter, 41. Single mom, 4 boys, born 5 years ago at Swedish Medical. Worked odd jobs, waitressing, crafts, and... Oh, this is good. Part-time gig at Nexus Tech 2 years back. Sound familiar?" James frowned. "Nexus Tech? Our competitor?" "Yep," Nathan said, tossing the phone onto the desk. "She was on their payroll while they were undercutting us on that Portland contract. Cozy, huh?" "That doesn't mean anything," James said, but his voice wavered. "She could have been desperate. 2 years ago, her parents died in a car crash. She's been on her own since then." Nathan raised a brow. "You're already making excuses for her. Look, maybe she needed cash. Maybe she sold them some intel. Point is, she's not as innocent as you think. And now she's got you hooked." James sank back into his chair, the room feeling smaller, the air thicker. Nexus Tech. It didn't fit the Emily he remembered, the one who'd rather knit a sweater than touch a spreadsheet. But desperation could twist anyone. He thought of Levi's thin hoodie, Caleb's fierce little stance. Were they just pawns in some game? "I'm going back to see her," he said finally, his voice low. "I need to hear it from her." Nathan sighed, running a hand over his buzzed hair. "Fine. Do what you've got to do. But don't say I didn't warn you. And for God's sake, don't sign anything until we've got DNA." James didn't respond, his mind already racing ahead to Rainier Valley. He needed answers. Straight from Emily, not some PI's report. But Nathan's words gnawed at him, planting seeds of doubt he couldn't shake. The door clicked open again, and Rachel Nguyen poked her head in, her dark hair pulled into a messy bun. "Hey, boss." "Oh, hi, Nathan." "You okay, James? You look like you've seen a ghost." "He has," Nathan said dryly, grabbing his iPad. "I'm out. Call me when you're ready to face reality." Rachel stepped inside as Nathan left, her sneakers squeaking on the floor. She carried a stack of folders for the San Francisco pitch, but her eyes were on James. Everything good? You've been off all day. James forced a smile, but it didn't stick. Just family stuff. She set the folders down, hesitating. You've got a family? I mean, besides Nathan? Maybe, he said, the word heavy. I don't know yet. Rachel tilted her head, studying him. Look, I don't know what's going on, but I've been there. I raised my kid alone for 3 years before my ex stepped up. If there's a chance you've got people out there who need you, don't let it slip away. Trust me. James met her gaze, her words cutting through the fog. Rachel didn't know the half of it, but she was right about one thing. He couldn't let this go. Not now. Thanks, Rachel, he said quietly. I'll figure it out. She nodded, heading for the door. Let me know if you need anything, even if it's just coffee. Alone again, James picked up Nathan's phone, the Nexus Tech detail staring back at him. He set it down, grabbing his keys instead. Doubt or not, he was going back to Emily. He had to. Hey, folks, he muttered to the empty room, a faint echo of his keynote voice. Things just got messy. Nathan's throwing curveballs, and James is stuck in the middle. What's he gonna find out next? Stick around, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment. What do you think about Nathan's take? James Harper didn't waste time after leaving the office. The doubt Nathan had planted gnawed at him. But Rachel's words, "Don't let it slip away," rang louder. By Saturday afternoon, he was back in his Range Rover, heading north from downtown Seattle to Gasworks Park. Emily had reluctantly agreed to meet him there after a dozen texts and a promise to keep it short. Just you and the boys, she'd said. No lawyers, no bullshit. He'd agreed, though his hands still gripped the wheel tighter than necessary as he pulled into the lot. Gasworks was a relic of Seattle's industrial past, all rusted pipes and old machinery turned into a quirky public space. The late November air was crisp, the sky a patchy gray with hints of sun breaking through. Lake Union shimmered in the distance, waves lapping against the shore while gulls screeched overhead. The park was busy. Families picnicking on the grass, kids chasing kites, a guy strumming a guitar near the old boiler towers. James spotted Emily near the water's edge, sitting on a blanket with the boys scattered around her. His heart thudded as he parked and stepped out, the wind tugging at his coat. Emily looked up as he approached, her brown eyes guarded. She wore a faded denim jacket and jeans, her hair loose now, catching the breeze. The boys were in motion, Caleb kicking a soccer ball against a tree, Isaac hunched over a park map with a pencil, Finn spinning in circles like he was piloting an invisible plane, and Levi sitting cross-legged, watching the waves with a quiet intensity. They hadn't noticed James yet, and he took a moment to just look at them. His sons. The thought still felt surreal, like a dream he couldn't wake from. "Hey," he said, stopping a few feet from the blanket. His voice came out rougher than he'd meant. "Hey," Emily replied, standing up. She brushed grass off her knees, her posture stiff. "You're here. Let's make this quick." James nodded, shoving his hands into his pockets. "I just want to talk, Em. About them. About us." "There is no us," she said, her tone flat. "There hasn't been for 6 years. You're here for them, fine, but don't act like this is some big reunion." He winced, but he couldn't argue. She was right. He'd walked away back then, too caught up in Harper Innovations to see what he was losing. "Okay," he said. The boys, then. I saw them at the market, and I can't unsee it. They're mine, aren't they? Emily's jaw tightened, her gaze flicking to the kids. Caleb had stopped kicking the ball, his sharp eyes locking onto James. "Mom?" he called, suspicious. "It's okay, Caleb," she said, forcing a smile. "Keep playing. This is an old friend." Caleb didn't look convinced, but he went back to the ball, keeping James in his peripheral. Emily turned back, lowering her voice. "You don't get to just show up and claim them, James. You weren't there." "I didn't know," he said, frustration bubbling up. "That email you sent, I found it last week. It was stuck in the system. You said it was important, but I never got it. Why didn't you try harder?" Her eyes flashed, a spark of old fire. "Try harder? You think I didn't? I went to your damn office, James. 3 weeks after the divorce, I stood in that fancy lobby with a positive test in my purse, and your security goons told me I couldn't see you without an appointment. I didn't even get past the front desk." James blinked, the words hitting like a slap. "You... what?" "Yeah," she said, her voice trembling now. "I waited an hour hoping you'd come down. You didn't. Your assistant, some blonde with a clipboard, said you were unavailable for personal matters. So I left. And when I found out it was Quadruplets, I knew I couldn't keep chasing a ghost." He stood there, stunned, the wind whipping around them. He remembered that assistant, Karen maybe, a gatekeeper who'd guarded his time like a hawk during the company's early growth. He'd never known Emily had come. "I didn't get a message," he said, almost to himself. "If I'd known..." "You'd have what?" she cut in. "Dropped everything? Quit your empire to play house? Don't kid yourself, James. You made it clear what mattered most." "That's not fair," he said, stepping closer. "I was an idiot back then, yeah. But if I'd known about them, I'd have been there. I swear." She laughed, a bitter sound. "You say that now. Hindsight's a hell of a drug." "Mommy, look!" Finn shouted, breaking the tension. He'd found a stick and was waving it like a sword, grinning wide. "I'm a pirate!" "Good job, Finn," Emily called back, her face softening for a moment. She turned to James, her voice steadying. "They're my world, James. I've raised them alone since day one. My parents helped until the crash 3 years ago. Car accident on I-5. After that, it was just me. No backup, no safety net. So forgive me if I don't trust you waltzing in now." James's throat tightened. He'd heard about her parents' death, vaguely through mutual friends, but hadn't connected the dots. 3 years ago, he'd been in Shanghai, closing a deal, while she was burying her family and raising 4 kids. "I'm sorry," he said, meaning it. "About your folks, about everything." "Sorry doesn't change it," she said, but her edge dulled slightly. "What do you want, James? Really?" "I want to know them," he said, his voice raw. "I want to be their dad, if they'll let me. I've missed 5 years, Em. I don't want to miss more." She studied him, her eyes searching his face like she was looking for the man she'd once loved. Before she could answer, Levi stood up from the blanket and toddled over, his small hands stuffed in his pockets. He stopped in front of James, tilting his head. "Are you Mom's friend?" he asked, his voice soft but clear. "You look like us." James's breath caught. Up close, Levi was a mirror. Those blue eyes, that quiet intensity. He knelt down, meeting the boy's gaze. "Yeah, buddy," he said, his voice cracking. "I'm an old friend. And you're right. We do look alike, don't we?" Levi nodded, then reached out, his tiny hand brushing James's sleeve. "Your coat's fancy," he said matter-of-factly. "Ours are old." James glanced at the boy's hoodie, thin, frayed at the cuffs, barely enough for the chilly wind. His chest ached, a flood of guilt and something deeper washing over him. He didn't think, just acted, slipping off his coat and draping it over Levi's shoulders. It swallowed the kid, the hem dragging on the grass, but Levi's eyes lit up. "Warm," he said, hugging it closer. "Levi, no," Emily started, stepping forward, but James held up a hand. "It's fine," he said. "He can keep it. I've got others." She hesitated, pride warring with practicality in her expression. Finally, she sighed. "Fine. But this doesn't mean anything, James. You can't buy your way in." "I'm not trying to," he said, standing. I want a chance, Em. That's all." She looked at Levi, then at the other boys, who were drifting closer now, drawn by the exchange. Caleb's arms were crossed, Isaac's pencil still in hand, Finn's stick dangling forgotten. "We'll see," she said finally. "You can come around sometimes, for them. But it's on my terms." "That's all I'm asking," James said, relief flooding him. He looked down at Levi, who was still wrapped in the coat, and something clicked. A connection, fragile but real. He reached out, ruffling the boy's hair, and Levi didn't pull away. "Mom, who's he really?" Isaac asked, his voice cutting through. "He's not just a friend, is he?" Emily froze, her eyes meeting James's. "Not now, Isaac," she said gently. "We'll talk later." A woman approached from the parking lot. Hannah Lopez, Emily's friend from the market, her buzz cut damp from the wind. She carried a thermos, her gaze locking onto James with instant suspicion. "Everything okay here?" she asked, handing the thermos to Emily. "Yeah," Emily said, taking it. "We're good, Hannah." Hannah didn't look convinced. "You sure? He's not pushing you, is he?" "I'm not," James said, meeting her stare. "I just want to be here for them." She snorted, turning to Emily. "Your call, Em. But if he steps out of line, I've got your back." "Thanks," Emily said, a faint smile tugging at her lips. She glanced at James. "We're done for today. I'll text you." He nodded, watching as she gathered the boys, Hannah hovering like a guard dog. Levi waved at him, the coat still draped over his shoulders, and James waved back, his heart swelling. It was a start. "Hey, everyone," he said to the empty park, a grin breaking through. "Big moment." James gets a foot in the door, and Levi steals his heart. What's next for this crew? Stick with me. Hit subscribe and drop a comment. What do you think of this breakthrough? James Harper had been riding a cautious high since the park. For 2 weeks, he'd carved out time between board meetings and investor calls to see Emily and the boys. Short visits. Nothing fancy. A trip to the Rainier Valley playground where Finn showed off his spaceship moves on the slide. A rainy afternoon at their cramped duplex where Isaac grilled him about how computers worked. Small steps, but they felt like giant leaps. Emily kept her distance, her rules firm. No big gifts, no promises, just presence. And James was trying. God, was he trying? But that Monday night, everything unraveled. He was in his penthouse, microwaving a sad excuse for dinner, some Trader Joe's frozen burrito, when his phone buzzed. Emily's name lit up the screen, and his stomach dropped. She never called this late. "James," she said when he picked up, her voice tight, panicked. "It's Levi. He's burning up. 104 fever. I'm taking him to the clinic in Rainier Valley. I didn't know who else to call." "I'm coming," he said, already grabbing his keys. "Which clinic?" "Southside Urgent Care on Henderson. Hurry." The drive was a blur, the Seattle rain hammering the windshield as he sped south. Rainier Valley glowed dimly through the storm, streetlights flickering, a neon sign buzzing over a bodega. The clinic was a squat brick building tucked between a laundromat and a pawn shop, its parking lot half empty. James pulled in, spotting Emily's beat-up Honda near the entrance. He bolted inside, shaking water off his coat. The waiting room smelled like antiseptic and stale coffee, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Emily sat in a corner, Levi curled in her lap, his small face flushed and sweaty. Caleb, Isaac, and Finn huddled on plastic chairs nearby, their hoodies damp, eyes wide with worry. James crossed the room in 3 strides. "How is he?" he asked, kneeling beside Emily. She didn't look up, her hand stroking Levi's hair. "They're running tests. Probably just a virus, but he's so hot, James. He's never been this sick." James reached out, brushing Levi's forehead. The kid's skin was like a furnace, and a pang shot through him. Fear, helplessness, something primal he didn't have a name for. "What can I do?" he asked. "Nothing," she said, her voice brittle. "Just stay with the boys. I need to talk to the doctor." She stood, shifting Levi into James's arms before he could protest. The weight of the kid hit him hard, small, fragile, burning up. Levi whimpered, nestling closer, and James's throat closed up. He sat down, cradling him, while Emily disappeared behind a swinging door. Caleb glared at him from across the chairs, his arms crossed tight. "Why are you here?" he demanded, his voice sharp for a 5-year-old. "Your mom called me," James said, keeping his tone steady. "I want to help." "We don't need you," Caleb shot back. "We've been fine forever without you." "Caleb," Isaac hissed, elbowing him. "Don't be mean." "He's not our dad," Caleb said, louder now, drawing a glance from an old guy in the corner. "He's just some guy who shows up sometimes." James felt the words like a knife, but he didn't flinch. "I get it, buddy. You don't know me. But I'm here because I care about you. All of you." Caleb's eyes narrowed, unconvinced. Finn fidgeted, tugging at his sleeve. "Is Levi gonna be okay?" he asked, his voice small. "Yeah," James said, forcing confidence he didn't feel. "He's tough, like you guys." Emily came back then, a nurse trailing her with a clipboard. "They're keeping him overnight," she said, her face pale. IV fluids, maybe antibiotics. I'm staying with him. I'll cover it, James said, standing with Levi still in his arms. The bill, whatever they need. No, she snapped, her voice cutting through the hum of the room. I don't want your money, James. We've managed without it this long. He's sick, he said, stepping closer. Let me help, please. Her eyes flashed, pride and exhaustion warring in them. You think throwing cash at this fixes anything? I've scraped by for 5 years. Food stamps, secondhand clothes, every damn shift I could get. You don't get to swoop in and play savior now. I'm not, he started, but the nurse interrupted. Ms. Carter, we need you back here, she said, glancing at James. Emily nodded, taking Levi from him. His arms felt empty as she walked away, the door swinging shut behind her. James sank into a chair, running a hand through his wet hair. The boys watched him, silent now, the weight of the moment pressing down. He was about to say something, anything, when his phone buzzed. Nathan. He answered, keeping his voice low. What? He said. Got more from the PI, Nathan said, no preamble. Emily filed custody papers 3 weeks ago. Full legal custody of the boys. She was ready to lock you out before you even showed up. James's stomach twisted. What? Yeah, Nathan said, his tone smug. Dated right after the San Francisco deal hit the news. Still think she's not playing you. She didn't tell me, James said, his mind reeling. Why would she? Because she doesn't trust you, Nathan cut in. Or she's setting up for a bigger move. Money, control, whatever. You're in deep, bro. Pull back. James hung up without replying, staring at the linoleum floor. Custody papers. 3 weeks ago. Before the park. Before Levi's coat moment. Had she been planning to cut him out all along? He looked at the boys, their faces a mix of fear and defiance, and the doubt Nathan had planted grew roots. Hours dragged by, the waiting room emptying out. Emily finally emerged, Levi trailing behind her, an IV bandage on his little hand. He's stable, she said, her voice flat. We're going home. Let me drive you, James offered, standing. It's pouring out there. We'll manage, she said, gathering the boys. Like always. Emily, wait, he said, blocking her path. I need to know something. Levi's sick and you won't let me help. What's going on? And those custody papers, what the hell are they about? Her eyes widened, then narrowed. How do you? Doesn't matter, he said. Did you file them? Were you going to keep them from me? She froze, the boys clustering around her. I drafted them, she admitted, her voice low. Before you showed up at the market. I was scared, James. You came out of nowhere after 5 years, and I didn't know if you'd try to take them. I needed to protect them until I knew you were serious. And now? He pressed, his heart pounding. Now. She hesitated, glancing at Levi, who leaned against her leg. I haven't filed them, but I don't trust you yet. Not fully. Before James could respond, Caleb stepped forward, his small fists clenched. If you're our dad, why weren't you here? He shouted, his voice breaking. Levi's sick and you're just standing there. You're not our dad. You're nothing. The words hit James like a freight train, knocking the air out of him. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Caleb's eyes were wet, his chest heaving, and the other boys stared, waiting for an answer James didn't have. "Caleb, enough," Emily said, pulling him back. "Let's go." She ushered them out, the glass doors swinging shut behind her. James stood there, alone in the empty waiting room, the buzz of the lights deafening. He'd come to help, to prove himself, and instead, he'd hit a wall. Emily's pride, Caleb's anger, Nathan's damn report. It felt like the ground was crumbling beneath him. The door creaked open again, and Rachel Nguyen stepped in, soaked from the rain, holding a bag of toys. "Hey," she said, spotting him. "I heard from Emily's friend, Hannah, I think. Figured the boys could use something to cheer them up." James managed a weak nod. "Thanks. They're gone." Rachel set the bag down, frowning. "You okay? You look wrecked." "I don't know," he said, his voice hollow. "I thought I was getting somewhere, but maybe I'm too late." She sat beside him, quiet for a moment. "You're not. They're mad, scared. Hell, I was too when my ex came back. But you keep showing up. That's what matters." He didn't answer. The weight of Caleb's words, "You're nothing," sinking deeper. He'd failed them tonight, and the rift felt wider than ever. "Hey, folks," he muttered to the empty room, a ghost of his old confidence. "Things just hit rock bottom. Levi's sick, Caleb's done with me, and Emily's shutting me out. Can James fix this? Stick around, hit subscribe, and drop a comment. What would you do in his shoes?" The week after the clinic was a blur for James Harper. Levi's fever broke, but the rift between him and Emily, and Caleb's stinging words, left a mark he couldn't shake. He threw himself into work, prepping for the San Francisco pitch, but his heart wasn't in it. The penthouse felt emptier than ever, the sleek lines and million-dollar view mocking him. He kept showing up for the boys, though. Playground visits, a pizza night at their duplex, but the air was thick with unspoken tension. Emily watched him like a hawk, and Caleb barely spoke to him. Then came the invite that changed everything. It was a text from Emily, short and to the point. "Boy's 6th birthday this Saturday, 2 p.m., our new place in Ballard. You can come if you want." A new place. James had offered to help her find something better after the clinic night. Nothing fancy, just safer, warmer, and she'd taken it, though she insisted on splitting the deposit. He didn't argue. Saturday dawned clear, a rare break from Seattle's endless gray. James drove to Ballard, a cozy neighborhood of bungalows and breweries northwest of downtown. The address led him to a small craftsman house, white siding, a covered porch, a patchy lawn out back. It wasn't much, but it beat the duplex in Rainier Valley. Balloons bobbed on the mailbox, red and blue, and the sound of kids laughing spilled from the yard. He parked, grabbing the gift bags from the passenger seat. Legos for Isaac, a spaceship model for Finn, a soccer ball for Caleb, a sketch pad for Levi. Simple stuff, per Emily's rules. As he stepped out, the smell of grilling burgers hit him, mingling with the salty breeze off Puget Sound. He rounded the house to the backyard, and there they were. Emily stood at a rusty BBQ, flipping patties in a faded apron. The boys darted around a makeshift obstacle course. Tires, a rope swing, a kiddie pool filled with balloons. Caleb led the charge, barking orders like a tiny general, while Isaac timed them with a stopwatch. Finn tripped over a tire, laughing, and Levi hung back, sketching the scene on a clipboard. A dozen other kids, neighbors maybe, ran wild, chased by a couple of frazzled parents. "James," Emily said, spotting him. She wiped her hands on the apron, her expression unreadable. "You made it." "Wouldn't miss it," he said, setting the bags on a picnic table littered with chips and juice boxes. "Smells good." "Thanks," she said, nodding toward the grill. "First birthday in the new place. Figured we'd go big." He smiled, but before he could reply, Levi ran over, his blue eyes bright. "You came," he said, hugging James's leg. The kid was still small, but stronger now, the clinic scare fading. "Happy birthday, bud," James said, ruffling his hair. He handed Levi the sketch pad, and the boy's face lit up. "For me?" Levi asked, flipping it open. "All yours," James said, his chest tightening. Levi scampered off to show Isaac, and James felt Emily's gaze on him. "You're getting good at this," she said, her tone softer than usual. "Trying," he said, meeting her eyes. "Em, we need to talk about the custody papers. Nathan told me." Her face stiffened. "Not here," she said, glancing at the boys. "Later." He nodded, letting it drop. The party rolled on. Burgers devoured, a lopsided cake with 6 candles, the boys tearing into gifts with glee. James joined in, tossing the soccer ball with Caleb, who grudgingly kicked it back. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something. Then, as the sun dipped low, casting golden streaks across the yard, an unexpected figure appeared at the gate. Nathan Harper strode in. His black suit swapped for jeans and a sweater, a stack of wrapped boxes under his arm. James blinked, stunned. "What the hell are you doing here?" "Emily invited me," Nathan said, shrugging. "Said it was a family thing. Figured I'd see what the fuss is about." Emily smirked from the grill. "He's their uncle, right? Thought he should meet them." Nathan set the boxes down. Science kits, James guessed, knowing his brother's obsession with useful gifts. The boys swarmed him, curious, and Nathan crouched, introducing himself with a rare grin. "Hey, I'm Uncle Nate. Who's the boss around here?" "Me," Caleb said, stepping up. "You look like him." He jerked his thumb at James. "Twins," Nathan said, winking. "But I'm the cool one." James watched, a mix of shock and warmth settling in. Nathan had been a hard ass about this, hiring PIs, pushing DNA tests, but here he was, charming the boys like it was nothing. Maybe Emily had softened him up. Later, as the kids chased each other with water guns, Emily pulled James aside to the porch. "Okay," she said, crossing her arms. "Custody papers. Let's get it over with." "Nathan said you filed them," James said, keeping his voice low. "Full legal custody, 3 weeks before I showed up at the market. Were you planning to shut me out?" She sighed, leaning against the railing. "I drafted them, yeah. After the San Francisco deal hit the news. Your face was everywhere, James. I panicked. Thought you'd swoop in, throw money around, maybe take them. I didn't know you then, not this you." "So you filed?" he pressed. "No," she said, meeting his gaze. "I never filed. I tore them up after the park, when you gave Levi your coat. I saw you meant it. But I didn't tell you because I wasn't sure how far I could trust this. James let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. You could have told me. I should have, she admitted. I'm sorry. It's been me and them for so long I didn't know how to let you in. He nodded, the weight lifting slightly. I get it. I'd have done the same to protect them. She smiled faintly, a crack in her armor. Before he could say more, the boys barreled onto the porch, dripping wet and giggling. Cake time, Finn shouted, tugging Emily's hand. The party wound down, parents trickling out with sleepy kids. Nathan lingered, tossing a football with Isaac, while James helped Emily clean up. As they stacked plates, Caleb approached, his face serious. You're really our dad, aren't you? He asked, his voice quieter than usual. James knelt, heart pounding. Yeah, Caleb, I am. Caleb chewed his lip, then nodded. Okay, but you gotta stay. No leaving. I'm not going anywhere, James said, his voice thick. Promise. Caleb hesitated, then lunged forward, wrapping his arms around James's neck. James hugged him back, tears pricking his eyes. Isaac and Finn piled on, shouting, Dad! In unison, and Levi joined last, his small hand gripping James's sleeve. 4 boys, 4 pieces of him, holding on tight. Emily watched, her eyes glistening, a hand pressed to her mouth. Nathan clapped James on the shoulder as the boys broke away. They're yours, no doubt, he said, handing over a folder. DNA results. Didn't need 'em, but I figured you'd want proof. James took it, glancing at the papers, 99.9% match. He smiled, tucking it away. Thanks, Nate. Don't get soft on me, Nathan said, but his grin betrayed him. They're sharp, these kids. Isaac's got my brain. I'm teaching him stocks next week. The night ended with the boys sprawled on the lawn, exhausted, clutching their gifts. James sat beside Emily on the porch steps, the air cool and still. They called me Dad, he said, his voice low. They did, she said, a soft laugh escaping. You've changed, James. Really. So have you, he said. You raised them, strong, smart, good. I missed so much, but I'm here now. She nodded, her hand brushing his briefly. We're not a couple, you know, but we're a team. For them. Team works, he said, squeezing her hand back. Maybe more someday. No rush. She didn't answer, but her smile said enough. From the yard, Levi looked up, waving his sketch pad. Dad, look. I drew us. James walked over, taking the page. 5 stick figures, him, Emily, the boys, all with blue eyes, standing in a messy, happy line. Perfect, he said, pulling Levi into a hug. Months later, James moved to Ballard, 3 blocks from Emily's place. He scaled back at Harper Innovations, delegating to Nathan, who'd become Uncle Nate with a vengeance. Science fairs, soccer games, the works. James and Emily co-parented, a partnership built on trust, not romance. The boys thrived, their laughter filling both homes. Family wasn't what he'd built with money. It was what he'd fought for, step by step. Hey, everyone, he said to the night sky, grinning wide. That's the end. James finds his place, and the boys find their dad. What's the big takeaway here? Stick with me, hit subscribe, and drop a comment. What did you learn from this ride?